Hello everybody. I'm going by Andaros, and I've been unable to work for a while, and have had a lot of time to watch the world around me, a lot more than I wish to. We've been staying with my parents. Thankfully, they have taken care of us as far as a place to stay, and we give them rent, but we aren't able to give enough as far as I'm concerned. Anyways, I've been watching the United States and everything that's been going on, and it's rather disheartening because the country that we live in today is not the country it was 20 years ago. There's not even a hint of the patriotism that was at that time comparatively. And our freedoms have gone down quite a bit. Taxation it's gone out of control. And the ones doing it are on these so-called Democrats who, they're not the liberal party that they used to be. And there are socialists in control, and they have been, and they've been systematically destroying our country for 20 plus years. Now, this will get me yelled at by a lot of people, but I don't mind that. In fact, I would rather get yelled at for saying what I've noticed than to be silent and let the world go to hell in a handbasket. I want to tell a story today, and it's based on my observances and what I've seen both in the media and outside of it. So hopefully it will awaken some people, and others it will simply let them understand my point of view as to what's going on in this country. So, a liberal, a conservative, and a socialist entered a debate to decide how to run their country together. They decided that during this debate, they would have a small part of the audience act out various aspects of their debate points in order to decide the winner. The conservative based his points upon God, law, capitalism, strict observance of the nation's Constitution and Declaration of Independence, national pride, and conserving traditional values. The liberal based her points upon God, research, capitalism, empathy, the Constitution, national cohesion, and progress. The socialist based his arguments on equality based on government power, a controlled press, the people sharing everything equally, disarming the populace, and a single government for the entire world. The liberal and the conservative clashed on the differences between the two, but were really two faces of the same coin. They saw things differently, but their basic points were actually very similar. They were much like a husband and wife who squabbled over small things but generally worked together. The socialist, on the other hand, was like a stone or pebble, taking a very different stance or outlook. As he argued, the two sides would often find reason to argue together against him, and he soon found himself completely put on the defensive by the two. Seeing the situation, he stepped back and watched as the two returned to their argument. As he sat back and watched them argue, he noticed that he couldn't do much about the conservative, as he was always arguing based upon the law and conserving long-held values. The liberal, on the other hand, used research and progress in her arguments. Seeing this, he realized that the conservative would stick as much to preserving the nation's highest law, his constitution, as he did to his religion, Christianity. He had a firm foundation the socialist could think of no way to destroy. The liberal, on the other hand, based her arguments on empathy and research, while using logic to hold the two together. After observing the two for a while, he noticed that if he wanted to win, he must gain one on his side, and that the liberal was an easier target for doing this. The only decision he had to make was how to do it. He eventually decided to use deceit in order to get the liberal on his side. After a bit of thought, he realized that logic might be holding her views on empathy and progress in check for the liberal. But what was holding logic in check was God, so he attacked there first. He interjected a theory that said mankind came from a common ancestry with animals into the conversation. The liberal did not understand the danger. The way the socialist explained it seemed very illogical. The conservative, on the other hand, was very alarmed at the theory, as he realized the danger right away and fought back against the theory, exposing the flaws in the socialist's logic, and he found himself once again blocked by the two. The socialist did not give up. However, he believed he was right and didn't like God one bit. His pride pushed him onward. After some thought, he realized the conservative's response was so strong because of his fear of God. So this time he deceitfully brought up an idea, one of unconditional love. After all, the conservative's Bible said God was love. The idea was immediately latched onto by both of the other two sides, and the conservative watched happily as the two continued to debate. The conservative continued to mention God in his arguments, but they were no longer so sharp or harsh as they had been, so he threw out the theory once more. This time, the conservative didn't react as promptly as before. When he brought up his chosen theory, and the liberal latched onto the theory. The socialist watched on with a smirk as the liberal took up the banner of evolution and started to stop bringing God into the conversation. The problem was that while the conservative's arguments were no longer so sharp, he still brought God into the conversation quite often. So the socialist did his best to shame the conservative into no longer bringing out God. It didn't work at first, but the liberal soon joined in on the idea of excluding God from the debate. She had always been more focused on research and logic anyways, as she felt her emotions made her vulnerable. The two continued their debate, albeit the conservative no longer brought up God as often as before. Realizing his initial success, the socialist was filled with glee and tried to turn the liberal against the conservative once again, but the two once more rallied together and argued against him. He realized that he had made a misstep and jumped too quickly, but wasn't sure where. He soon realized the liberal still relied on her logic to hold her views on empathy and progress in balance. He reasoned that if he made either progress or empathy of greater importance than the other, her logic would be unable to hold the two ideals in balance. First, he decided to try progress, but that didn't really work. Progress did put some strain on the liberal's logic, but it didn't really do enough, because each time the conservative would say something and cause her empathy to respond and strengthen itself, so that the strain was alleviated. This frustrated the socialist, as he could not turn her against the conservative once again. But if it was to get his way, the socialist could be patient for a bit longer. The socialist realized that as long as the liberal relied on empathy, he would not win the debate, and so he decided that he had to replace empathy with something else. He watched the audience and soon saw someone that gave him an idea. This person wasn't playing along and ignored the others when they played their parts, so she would take what was given but wouldn't give back. This gave him an idea. He had to make the liberal selfish. But how could he do that? He realized that selfishness was the opposite side of the coin from empathy. But how could he turn that empathy into selfishness? After a lot of thought, he decided the best way to achieve his goal was to turn her into a victim. So he re-entered the debate and carefully worked his words so that the conservative would not be alarmed, but he could convince the liberal that she was a victim. It took time, but it worked. She bought the lies he had told, and logic soon began to buckle under the strain of her empathy turned to selfishness. So long as he reminded her that she was a victim, she believed everything he said. At first, the conservative was not aware of what was happening, but he eventually noticed a difference in the way she responded and became alarmed. The two groups, representing the socialists and liberals, began to slowly work together, but the socialists didn't notice that more than half of them grew concerned while he was elated from his progress. The conservative finally realized the danger of the situation and rallied himself. In his desperation, he acted more like he had in the past. It caused the liberal to remember the past, and she realized how wrong she had been to listen to the socialist. She stopped being so selfish and even rallied alongside the conservative to combat the socialist who had tricked her. The people who had been unnerved by what was happening rallied alongside her and turned to the conservative's side, people who were not content to be victims. The socialist panicked, then threw a fit. He had long since taken over the liberals' press and formed a network that had a monopoly over the news, which he called the media. He used it to bash the conservative and all his people, playing the same old cards he had initially used, things like political correctness and racism, to try to stem the tide of those turning away from his ideals. When that didn't work, he began to try to bribe and bring in audience members from elsewhere to restore his numbers advantage, but the conservative and liberal did not do as he expected, and they paid attention to his move. They reacted strongly to the threat these new audience members posed, and kept them from joining haphazardly. So we come to this point in the story. America must decide how this story ends. How should this story go, America? Will the liberal restore her faith in God and her empathy with her fellow compatriot? Or will the socialist turn her against him once again? Ball's in your court, America. This is Honduras, signing out.